Alrighty, let's go ahead and get the big, beautiful bill stuff out of the way, because it's the stuff that is honestly pretty freaking scary, and we're just going to get into other horrors beyond our imaginations right after that. But before we do that, I do want to quickly get into the fan art section, because we need to celebrate at least a little bit of the good that is going on in this community, and y'all's talent, y'all's skill is something worth celebrating. So let's go ahead and get into that real quick. Poppers says, decided to do quick drawings of Suris in my cute face style. If it weren't for the characters being a slime girl, line art would have taken me a lot shorter than it turned out it did. Well, Poppers, I appreciate the various cute faces here. They are all adorable, and I very much like them. Feels very, very Twitch emote-y. I definitely like these. I definitely like these. As always, thank you for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. Now, before we go too much further, I want to go ahead and say it's really weird to me, and I wish I was sponsored by Ground News so I could talk about this, but in talking about the big, beautiful bill, scrolling through CBS News, what's in Trump's House passed one big, beautiful bill, we see tax cuts and extensions, Medicare restrictions, increased state and local tax deductions, border security funding, $1,000 for child savings. I'm not sure if you have ever raised a child, but that's pennies in the goddamn jar for them. There's all this stuff in here. The one thing that I'm not seeing in all of this at all is the part that has me most concerned in this particular bill. So let's go to Newsweek, which actually is talking about the part that has me concerned. A hidden provision in Trump's big, beautiful bill that could disarm the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, why is this happening? Well, it's pretty obvious. As I've mentioned before, old money and new money are having a fight in the legal system. The Supreme Court is funded by old money, and our Trump regime is funded by new money. New money being the tech billionaires like Elon Musk, etc. Elon Musk, Bezos, frickin' Zuckerberg, all of them are new money. Whereas your older money, your old Wall Street stock options, that's the stuff that funds the current Supreme Court. That's the people who are funding think tanks, who are giving money to Clarence Thomas. That's your old money. The war that's happening between them is effectively being fought as a proxy war, with Trump in the driver's seat of new money and the Supreme Court in the driver's seat of old money. So Trump is trying to take more power away from the Supreme Court, which de facto will consolidate that power into the executive branch. Now, why is he doing this? Again, he's on the side of that new money, but he's doing this because the Supreme Court has ruled against him in recent years. Now, again, or not recent years, but in recent months. Again, it should be noted, this is not a sign that the courts are on our side. This is not a sign that the Supreme Court is in our court. This is a sign that we have an enemy of our enemy. That does not necessarily make them our friend, because as leftists, in general, whenever you are in a position where there is a force that is funded by a fuck ton of capital, it wants you to lose your rights. Period. All right. Let's continue. A provision hidden in the sweeping budget bill that passed the U.S. House on Thursday seeks to limit the ability of the courts, including the Supreme Courts, from enforcing their orders. The provision, which I want to note again, CBS News did not fucking talk about. I'm just going to Control F real quick and see if they did. No, they didn't. What the fuck are you doing, CBS News? Well, we know whose pocket they're in. But anyway, let's look here. No court of the United States may use appropriated funds to enforce a contempt citation for failure to comply with an injunction or temporary restraining order if no security was given when the injunction or order was issued. The provision of the bill, which is more than 1,000 pages long, says, The provision would make most existing injunctions in antitrust cases, police reform cases, school desegregation cases, and others unenforceable, says Aaron Cherminsky, the dean of the University of California, Berkeley School of Law. It serves no purpose but to weaken the power of the federal courts. This matters because the provision would prohibit courts from enforcing contempt citations for violations of injunctions or temporary restraining orders, the main types of rulings that have been used to rein in President Donald Trump's admin, unless the plaintiffs have paid a bond, something that rarely happens when someone sues the government. If enacted, it would be a stunning restriction on the power of the federal courts. Cherminsky wrote in an article for Just Security. They said the Supreme Court has long recognized that contempt power is integral to the authority of the federal courts. Without the ability to enforce judicial orders, they are rendered mere advisory opinions which parties are free to disregard. Cherminsky wrote, the federal courts rarely require a bond to be posted by those who are restraining unconstitutional federal, state, or local government actions, as those seeking such orders do not have the resources to post bond, and insisting on it would immunize unconstitutional government conduct from judicial review. Representative Joe Neguse, a Colorado Democrat, said in an interview that the provision was added because the Trump administration is losing in virtually every court in the land. Remember when lefty content creators kept on going on and on and on about how it's really good that the courts are beating Trump, that Trump is losing to the courts? The reason that mattered is because it was the last place. It was the last place that we had any form of power. The Congress just passed this bill. Congress is 100% in the pocket of Trump. And the executive branch is Trump's regime. He's got 2 out of 3 things in his pocket, and the Supreme Court would have been in his pocket if it weren't for the fact that they were funded by old money. So now that the Supreme Court, and by extension all of the lower courts, are one of the only things left to protect people from things that Donald Trump is trying to force on them, now that Trump is making sure that those things are going to get put through regardless of what you say, regardless of what you want, regardless of what you vote for, more and more of our power as individual citizens is being taken away. It is being stripped away from us as citizens. So, before we go further into the article, I want to go ahead and pause for a minute. And I'm going to ask you, as a viewer, to do me a couple favors. First favor, I want you to subscribe to the channel. I really do. I need a bigger voice right now, and we need more people with big voices willing to talk against Trump. I am not an unbiased source, and I will never claim to be. I will never lie to you about being an unbiased source. I am quite biased. I am biased in favor of trans rights. I am biased in favor of being against capital. I am biased in favor of unions. I am biased in favor of socialism. If those are views that you hold as well, then you should be subscribing to this channel, and you should be shouting out this channel to other people. I implore you, and I would appreciate if you did. Also, I have a Patreon. I would greatly appreciate if you would subscribe over to the Patreon. I give background information on what's going on the channel, and I upload 4 videos a month talking about the things that are going on behind the scenes over there. You're going to basically, it's as if you are sitting in the car talking with me. If that is something that you are appreciative of or want, I would greatly appreciate you supporting my work there. Okay, that said, here's the other thing I need you to do. It's time to start thinking about this as if it's a war. And I'm not saying that in the sense that it's time to get violent. Violence is easy. Being pissed is easy. Being pissed is the default reaction. The problem is that fire dies out. That fire is not permanent. And it is almost always the case that the actions that you take while angry end up working against you. The hard thing to be right now is kind. Why do you need to be kind right now? In short, You cannot convince your allies to work with you if you are just a seething bottle of anger. You cannot convince your allies that they should be supporting you if you are doing nothing but being mad. And I know it's not something you want to hear. You want to hear that it's time to get angry. And it is. It is time to feel angry. It is time to use that anger as an item that can help you. But if you want to be useful, if you want to be effective, then it is time to be kind. It is time to get to know your neighbors. There's an entire suburban planning project that has been enacted over the course of several years for the sole purpose of atomizing all of us as individuals. Technology has gotten to the point where it can take up all of your time and you won't even know that it's disappeared. That is all by design. Again, think of who new money is. New money, tech billionaires, they want to monopolize your time. There is a classic way that time has been monopolized away from people, and it is a way that union workers have fought against for years. The classic way that time is taken away from you, which is time that you would have been using protesting, time that you would have been using lobbying, time that you would have been using getting to know your neighbors so that they knew to advocate for you and your rights when the time came, that time was taken away in the workforce. And don't worry, that time is still being taken away from you. You are still being asked to get a side hustle. You are still being asked to work a multi-hour or like plus 40-hour work week. You are still being asked to do things that are completely against your better interests in order to survive. Don't worry. That is still happening to you 100%. Every single person that thinks that they can't make ends meet right now, so they're working for Uber or they're working a second part-time job, all of that, every single bit of that is by design to take away your time. But the other thing that's taking your time away right now, the other thing that's taking your time away is TikTok. The other thing that's taking your time away is Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts. Short-form content that you're going to forget an hour after you watched it that does nothing to accentuate or improve your day. All it does is suck up your time. Now, I understand a lot of us have to engage with those systems no matter what, especially as content creators. But if I were to say one of the best things you can do right now, it would be to unplug from all of that shit so that your time is being used better. Right now, you need to be gathering with your friends. Right now, you need to be making friends. Right now, you need to be going outside. Right now, you need to be bridge building. Right now, the primary directive for every single person in the United States should be to get enough of us together and talking together. So that when inevitably our government comes to take more of our rights away, it is that much harder for them to do that. And make sure that you're doing good OPSEC as well. I can't tell you everything that you should be doing on a YouTube video, because that would be bad OPSEC. And you should not be discussing all the things that you want to be doing in a fucking Discord channel either. That would also be bad OPSEC. Clueless says it's the circus of bread and circuses. Yes. It is the myriad of distractions with the sole purpose of preventing you from being effective. If more of your time can be sucked away, then you are a product that makes lots and lots of advertising dollars. And if you are a product that makes lots and lots of advertising dollars, you're not really being very effective. You are just being a vector for other people to get paid money. That's it. And don't get me wrong, that is the plan. That has been the plan for a very, very long time. It's time to be pissed, but act kind. It is time to be upset, but be effective. It is time to get friends and family and everybody you love and care about on board with being part of a group that is not only going to go and lobby for your rights, that is not only going to go and argue for your rights in front of politicians, but groups of people who are going to be willing to protest, groups of people who are going to be willing to put their boots on the ground to prove that they care. And the only way you're going to be able to get that happening is by getting more and more people organically together. Asheroth says, so it'll be like help others out and whatever, whenever, however you can, and debate and convince them to help out kind of war? That is the amount of it that I am willing to talk about on a live stream, yes. That is the amount of it that I am willing to say on a camera. Because as of right now, your rights are being taken away, period. You need to be willing to put your boots on the ground. You need to be willing to not argue in a fucking internet forum. You need to be willing to talk to these politicians to their face. You need to be willing to harass your politicians. And no, I'm not just talking lobbying them. I'm not just talking lobbying them. I mean making sure that every single moment that you see one of them out in public, if you know they voted on one of these bills that have stripped your rights away, don't let them know peace. Simply do not let them know peace. They are a public servant. They owe it to you to answer to you. We'll continue on with the article once this orc is dead. You need to be pissed and act effective. You need to be angry and act kind. You need to be fed up, but not act fed up. Representative Joe Neguse, a Colorado Democrat, said in an interview that the provision was added because the Trump administration is losing in virtually every court in the land. Dozens of lawsuits have been filed since Trump returned to office, challenging his executive orders and actions taken by his administration. Judges have partially or fully blocked the president in at least 82 cases, according to a tally by the Associated Press. The administration has been pushing back against the court rulings that it doesn't like, with the president lashing out at judges who rule against him and seek an end to nationwide injunctions. The Supreme Court, earlier in May, barred the administration from quickly resuming deportations of Venezuelans under the Alien Enemies Act of 1978. Meanwhile, U.S. District Paul Zinnis has expressed frustration that the administration has yet to provide information that adequately explains how it was complying with her order, which was upheld by the Supreme Court to, quote, facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a man who was wrongly deported to El Salvador. So, I'm going to pause here again and say this is the reason that you need to get to know your neighbors right now. This is the reason that you need to be talking with your neighbors. This is the reason that you need to be getting more and more people on board with the idea that they need to be going out and protesting. It is time to do that, because if our government is allowed to ignore due process for any one of us, they are able to ignore due process for all of us. In order for politics and compassion to intersect, we need to make sure that everybody is on board with the same idea. The idea that if one of us goes down, all of us can go down. If anyone can be taken away without due process, everyone can be taken away without due process. So if you're sitting there going, I don't want to go out and protest, I'm worried that I'm going to get arrested, you're going to get arrested in your goddamn house anyway. You're going to get arrested no matter where you are. It doesn't matter what you do. It would be better to be fighting for your rights as an individual than to just let it happen. If you let it happen, it is quiet. And then it happens to more and more until there's not enough people to advocate for their own rights anymore. We have to make every single time this happens the loudest thing in the world, and we have to make it so difficult, so enormously difficult for Republicans to get away with this, and specifically for Donald Trump to get away with this. That way it becomes that much harder for them to get more of us. There is already a non-zero chance that bad things are going to happen to you. So you may as well try to work to minimize those as best you can. And right now, the way to minimize bad things happening to you is not cowering in your room. Right now, the way to minimize bad things happening to you is to swell the bodies in Washington, to swell the bodies in your local court systems, to swell the bodies in your local legislative branches, and let your voices be part of one cacophonous round that cannot be unheard and cannot be ignored. The way to advocate for your rights is to let Republicans know that if they are going to take away people in the night, then they should not deserve peace in the night. If they are going to take away people's rights in a legislative chamber at 1 in the morning, then they do not deserve peace at 1 in the morning, or 2 in the morning, or 3 in the morning. Politicians do shit like this because they know they can get away with it. But they are supposed to be our public servants. And it's time to remind them of that. Ienzo says, are we going to talk about all those immigrants that Trump disappeared and won't disclose their locations to anyone? We should be talking about those people. We should be talking about those people more often. We should be talking about every single one. And we should not just be talking about that with Republicans. We should not just be talking about that with our friends. We should be talking about that with our families. Anytime they bring up anything positive about Trump at all, you bring this up. If you're able to be made uncomfortable because you have a Trump-supporting family member, they deserve to be uncomfortable too. I'm sorry, Mom. What happens when it's me? What happens when they're knocking on my door, Mom? What happens when they're knocking on my door, Dad? You say it's not going to happen to us, but then you point out all the different people it has happened to. It's not going to happen to us doesn't justify it happening to other people. And if we're willing to let it happen to other people, then it's just going to happen to us. Again, this has been a long-standing job of the Suburban Development Project to make us feel atomized and isolated from one another, and then have that connection replaced artificially with the internet, basically. Have you ever felt like hanging out with your friends in a Discord call was great, but it didn't replace being able to hang out with them in real life? That's because it doesn't. It's great. It's wonderful. But it's so hard to organize if all of your friends are across state lines. This is why it's so important to make friends within your state. Make friends within your city. Make friends within your county who are going to be willing to be there for you when you need it. Sarah Chikorita says, Discord and IRC is literally all I've got, and that's a problem. That's a problem. Unless you literally live in an outskirt community with nobody around you for a mile, that's a thing that needs to be changing for all of us. You know how I got involved with protesting? It wasn't just talking about it on this channel. It was having a friend who was in the local Democratic Party who was going to a protest. Even somebody as plugged into politics as I am got more involved simply by being physically around people who were involved with politics. Rainington Mogus says, honestly, I wouldn't be too worried about this whole court thing because it almost 100% is going to get struck down in the Senate. I disagree. Because here's the thing. The fact that this provision was written in means that this is a goal of the Trump administration. And to not get up in arms about this goal, to not try to fight against this goal, to not worry about this goal, I think is naive. I think is completely naive. It's passed in the House, and they have a majority in the Senate. Let's see what margin they have that by. Let's see what margin they have that by. $53 seats to 45 seats. What makes you think that that's not going to get passed? How is it going to be struck down in a majority Trump-supporting Senate? How does that make any sense? Hoping for the better, like the better air of Republican lawmakers to cool their heads, I think is a 100% losing battle. So the Senate is saying right now they want a new bill and are going to write a new one. I'm not holding my breath on that. Again, this is a majority MAGA Senate. And because it's a majority MAGA Senate, I'm gonna operate like it's a majority MAGA Senate. He said, we are fucked now. Maybe there's hope if we do shit. There's always hope. You can never operate as if there's not hope. Never once will I say it's hopeless. But the only thing that's going to cause the Senate to actually work in our favor is fighting them. Rhymejack said, wasn't there a whole third that wasn't published because of how unpopular it was? So in a 1,000-paged thing, whether or not that's the case, it's the fact that there is that provision in the first place that bothers me. And it's always going to bother me. You mean Project 2025, not the budget bill? Okay. Shit like that only is unpopular for brief times. District Judge James E. Bosenberg said he would initiate hearings and may refer to the matter for prosecution if the administration does not act to remedy the violation. The administration has also removed immigrants against court orders in other cases. The provision in the House bill would make the court orders in these cases completely unenforceable, according to Tremsky. And it's that unenforceability that has me worried. Dr. Nuclear Winter said, chat made me quote Star Wars. Star Wars is good, though. Remember that the original thesis for Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6 was, let's do the Vietnam War, but with the trappings of World War II, so that Americans know who the good guys are. Let's do the war in Nam, with the rebels being Nam, and the imperialists being, well, America, who was imperial then as well. However, let's dress them up in Nazi regalia so that people understand what they're doing, so that they know who they're supposed to actually be voting for. Reginton Moga says the Senate goals are wholly different than the House goals. Thune said himself he wants a new bill. I don't care. I don't care. So here's the thing. I'm not going to operate as if we are going to get anything other than lip service. I don't give a flying fuck what a politician says. Politicians lie. I am done giving a fuck what politicians say. I am done ever giving a fuck what politicians say. I'm going to assume the worst of all of them all the time, because that is the safe thing to do. I don't give a flying shit what is said by a politician in the Senate or in the House if the goal of what is being said is to dissuade fears about a thing they are doing. I am going to operate as if those things are things to be worried about and things to be fought against. And I think that is the correct way to operate about these things in general. That all said, there are some other things in the big, beautiful bill. There are some smaller things in there that I want to talk about. Dr. Nuclear Winter says the Senate fighting the bill is a car salesman saying that he'll take your offer to the boss. That's my thought process. So, tax cuts and extensions, of course. Anytime there's a bill like this, there's going to be tax cuts. Especially since that's a thing that Trump tries to argue in favor for all the time. Especially if we can get tax cuts in there for the rich. We always need to put more loopholes in there for them. Aether says, can I invoke Poe's law now? I don't know if that applies here. So they'll vote the moment that they're sure they have 50 votes. Now let's get to the stuff that has me worried. Medicaid restrictions. The legislation includes changes to Medicaid, a popular entitlement program that provides government-sponsored health care for low-income Americans, imposing work requirements for able-bodied adults without children, more frequent eligibility checks, cutting federal funding to states that use Medicaid infrastructure to provide health care coverage to undocumented immigrants, and banning Medicaid from covering gender transition service for children and adults. That's the first step. I'm going to have a follow-up video talking about the second step, but specifically making sure that Medicaid is not able to fund transition care for adults. You know why they're doing that? Because every single time, let's go back into the time machine and talk about Republicans arguing that they would never do anything to stop adults from transitioning. It's all about protecting the kids. It's all about protecting the children. That's the only people that they would do it against. It was always bullshit, and every person who believed it is a sucker. It was always bullshit, and every person who believed it was a sucker. The fact of the matter is, the goal has always been to harm trans people. You start with the easiest people to advocate against, the people who are okay with puberty blockers for kids. And then from there, you move to the arguments that are harder to have. You get people on board with the softest version of your regime, and you introduce stronger versions of it over time. Dan says nobody believed them. Yes, they did. You're making the mistake of thinking that everybody thinks like you. And that's a thing that I need everybody to stop doing. Stop thinking that marketing won't work on the populace because it doesn't work on you. Sidebar, yes, it does. Stop thinking that politicians have your best interest in heart because they said so. Or because you can think of a good politician. Stop thinking that, well, nobody I know believed them because your echo chamber is not representative of the people who are involved in politics. Most people involved in politics are normies. And when I'm saying involved in politics, I'm talking about the people who just go down to vote. Most people who go and vote don't know what the hell they're voting for. Jet says, if we're wrong about the Senate, then good, great, we love that, but this is a real hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Yeah, you're... In your mind, hope for a better future, but in your actions, prepare for a worse one. Politicians lie. Remember that so that your neighbors don't die. Sebby says, why must the world suck, though? Because we aren't making it a better place yet. The world sucks because the wrong people are in charge. So let's make sure that the right people get in charge. Hexahadron says, I've had to learn that marketing lesson from family members. I can see bullshit where they see benefits. Yep. Yep. But there's some other stuff in here that has me a bit concerned. Look at this one. Look at this nothing burger. $1,000 Trump accounts for child savings. The legislation also creates $1,000 savings accounts for children. These were originally entitled MAGA accounts, money accounts for growth and advancement. The name has been updated to Trump accounts. Under the plan, the federal government will contribute $1,000 to the accounts of children born between 2024 and 2028. So only kids born during the Trump regime get this. And it's only $1,000 to be used for higher education, job training, or the purchase of your first home. My home was $60,000. $1,000 is a drop in the goddamn bucket. My education, if I were to go to college, would run me over $150,000. $1,000 is a drop in the bucket. That is a nod so that somebody can go, look at that. Trump did a good thing. These are people who are so out of touch with fucking reality that they don't know what the needs of the average person are. They have no idea what the needs of the average person are. Said it's just a house. What could it cost? $1,000. But somebody's going to point to this and go, look at the thing. Look at the thing Trump's did. Provided money for children who need to buy their first home. Isn't that a good thing? No. No, not really. Like, yeah, it's a good thing that you handed a homeless person a peanut butter and jelly sandwich one time in your life. But if you had the ability to vote on a bill that would have ended homeless hunger in the United States, and you chose not to do that, I don't give a fuck about the sandwich you handed out. This is another way that politicians will lie so that more of us can die. They get to use obfuscation, where they're not technically lying. They get to point to this and say, look at this good thing we did. And technically they're correct. And everybody's going to put the meme in, which is the best kind of correct. And then you're going to have to beat your friend across the head. Sebby says, I'm close to going Cave Johnson on Trump's ass. When life gives you lemons, you find a new god. No, again, the hardest thing in all this is gonna be focusing the energy from this into getting more of your friends on board with going and protesting and lobbying and being able to be there for you when shit hits the fan. a lot of you are going to need to start learning some hard communication skills. And that's going to suck. But it's also going to be necessary. Sarah says, I at least know my two closest friends are left of center like myself. Then it's time to get more friends. It's good that you have 2. Now let's make it 3. Now let's make it 4. Now let's make it enough people that you can make a difference. It can't just be me. It has to be all of you as well. Sebi says, or we could take vows of silence and only use text-to-speech. I don't see what that's going to accomplish. That's the kind of thing you do because you think other people care about you. And I promise you, up on Capitol Hill, they don't. Then there's restrictions on food stamps. The package also raises the upper age requirement for able-bodied adults without children to qualify for benefits under the Supplemental Nutrition Program. Currently, in order to qualify, able-bodied adults between 18 and 54 must meet work requirements. The House bill would update that age requirement to 18 to 64, and would then shift more of the cost to the states. So I guess if you're living in a state that doesn't have just high general income or lower taxes, then I guess you're fucked. Zach says, y'all, I'm so pissed I can't participate in protesting. That is the wrong energy to have. I will fight you on this one. That means that your immediate goals are learning how to manage that. Your immediate goals are learning how to be effective. We can find any excuse at all to not put our boots on the ground and say that we would not be the effective person. And then we all lose our rights. Then we all lose the fight, all of us, collectively. It's time to stop doing that. It's time to stop thinking it can't be me and start thinking, well, why couldn't it be me? Why shouldn't it be me? If not me, who? If not now, when? Here's a thought. Here's a thought. You know what would help fight a lot of this? A general strike. An actual, honest-to-God general strike would kneecap all of this shit. You know why we can't do a general strike? Because the right wing, and Democrats as well, have not been very good about this, have been making sure that more and more anti-union legislation is able to be passed year by year. So that people like Elon Musk don't have to worry about unions. Naki Bree says, oh, just strike with what time off. That's why you need a union. That's the purpose. That's why Republicans have fought against unions as hard as they have. Because a general strike kills all their power. And you can't do a general strike if you don't have unions in every single sector providing for the needs of the unionized. A general strike kneecaps this thing. But you can't do a general strike if you can't eat. It's time to start hanging with friends who are in your industry and start talking about forming unions. Interesting. I think I'm gonna die here. Zaka says, no, I've struggled with this for a while now. Seriously, a weekend in jail would be death for me. If there's a risk of arrest, I'm out. Stuff like general strike is fine. If that is how you feel about your situation, you are the best judge of that. More so than I am. I will stand by my position that there are more people who have that thought process and yet actually can go out and do something and use it as an excuse not to. We've covered most everything in the bill that has me worried. There's still more stuff in there, but I think the best thing we can do right now is have another call to action. Not only one for subscribing and all that other fun stuff that is necessary for the algorithm to be happy with what I've been doing, but it's time to use Mobilize so that you can get your boots on the ground with other people. Angie Femboy, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. For those of you who are not familiar, this is Mobilize. This is almost a one-stop shop for most things that you would need for going out and finding people who are going to be putting their boots on the ground and protesting. And the best part is once you get your boots on the ground with these people, exchange phone numbers. And when there's more protests in the area, especially stuff that isn't on Mobilize, they will let you know. When there's other meetings, people here will let you know. There are some other resources that I would highly recommend you using. Here is a link, and these are linked in the description of every YouTube video. Here is a link to all the chapters for the Democratic Socialists of America, so you can start working from the ground up to get different people in positions of power who are more willing to advocate for you. And this is 5 calls. This is the best way to get started with harassing your representatives and senators. And especially with the big, beautiful bill, you need to be harassing your senators, Democrat and Republican alike. Bohemian Lucy says, my coworker made a joke about unions and one of our managers says we can't even say that word. Tell your manager to fuck off. Nobody can say you're not allowed to say the word union. That's a goddamn lie. And for every person that tries to make that true, well, I can't say what we should be doing. Not sure if this explains anything, but I work at Walmart. Oh, it does. It does. I've worked at Walmart. I've seen their anti-union propaganda. I've taken my CBLs. I remember. If you're working at Walmart, if they can't get you to go down the route of a D-Day, then you get to file for unemployment. Always make Walmart regret being Walmart. Regaton Mogus says, other important note from May 24th to June 2nd, the Senate will be in recess. Remember this. Find your Republican senators. Never let them know peace. No, don't. Their laws actively infringe on your rights no matter where you are. So why should they know peace and security wherever they are? No, I agree. I will leave you with one final note. We need to be working far harder for a world where politics is fueled by compassion and less by capital. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full-time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie-chan, Kiri Artemis, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Leela Uraraka, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.